we're gonna hopefully, now that I'm on a different device, this shouldn't be that hard to do the shared screen. So I'm live now. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug with Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly. We got Brother Joshua, Brother Ray on here. We got Sister Sadia. We got, we got Ronnie as a guest today. We got Sister Milka coming on as a guest. We got Brother Dennis, Sister Shoshana. Let's see here. And we got another unknown number. I don't know who that is. We got Dolly also on as a guest here. So we're going to be doing, it's kind of like I guess you could say a review from last year, but since this is Sukkot, we're celebrating Sukkot today. We're celebrating the rest of the first high day of Sukkot today for our fellowship. So we're going to be going into the Feast of Sukkot, aka the Feast of Shelters, temporary dwelling places, tents, whatever you want to call it, tabernacles. So we're going to be going into a study about this. Hopefully, if my device cooperates, you guys should be able to hear me on the shared screen. So see, display overall apps. Okay, so here we go. Now my shared screen audio is on. Go to docs. All right. Feast of Booths, Shelters. Okay. Let me just change the title of this and make it 2022. I don't know why it does that. This is what I wanted to do. Okay. 2022. All right. So all the feasts point to Yahusha. Colossians 2:16-17. So let's go to that first. And hopefully my audio is coming through here. All right, so try to use it. Easy translation to use here. Go to Scriptures 1998 here. Colossians 2:16-17. I'm gonna just waiting for my mom and others to get there.
That's all right. Go ahead, honey.
No, I would rather wait, Mom. I don't want to be jumping to this place, that place, and then you're not able to
I was
follow. No, I can wait. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah. Let no one therefore judge you in eating or in drinking or in respect of a festival or new moon or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of what is to come, but the body of the Messiah. So I always bring this and kind of, I always feel led to open our studies out with this, especially for the appointed times, the Moedim, because this shows that it's a shadow that has not fully came. It's still to come. It actually says, do not let anyone judge you for keeping these. So what is Paul referring to historically here? He's referring to the Gnostics and the people that would be judging from the outside, saying, why are you doing these things? Why are you keeping these feasts? Why are you keeping these Sabbaths? Okay, the Gnostics back then in the first century were a big part of that. They were a big part of judging people for keeping Torah. You see later on, Constantine with the Universal Church, the Catholic Church, he started judging genuine believers for that, telling them if you want to become a Christian, you got to forsake the Torah, yada, 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 and all that. So, so now we're going to go to Leviticus 23:33-45. So pretty much the last 1/3 of that chapter, pretty much. So I'll give you guys time to get there. Leviticus 23 verses 33-45. So let's see here. Okay, so you just got there, Mom?
No, I've been
All right.
here.
Okay. All right. So Leviticus 23 verses 33. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yasharel on the 15th day of this 7th month. There shall be a feast of tabernacles 7 days to Yahuwah. And on the first day shall be a set-apart gathering. You shall do no servile work. 7 days you shall offer whole burnt offerings to Yahuwah. And the 8th day shall be a set-apart gathering to you. You shall offer whole burnt offerings to Yahuwah. It is a time of release. You shall do no servile work. That's interesting. Does your version say time of release?
No.
It's interesting.
No, it doesn't.
That's very interesting because that's showing a connection to the year of release. That's interesting. These the feast to Yahuwah, which you shall call set apart gatherings to offer burnt offerings to Yahuwah, whole burnt offerings and their grain offerings and their drink offerings, that for each day on its day, besides the Sabbaths of Yahuwah, besides your gifts and besides all your vows, besides your free will offerings, which you shall give to Yahuwah. And on the 15th day of this 7th month, and when you shall have completely gathered in the fruits of the earth, you shall keep a feast to Yahuwah 7 days. On the first day there shall be a rest. On the 8th day a rest. And on the first day you shall take two-leaf fruit of trees, branches of palm trees, and thick boughs of trees, willows, and branches of osiers from the brook to rejoice before Yahuwah your Elohim 7 days in the year. A perpetual statute for your generations. In the 7th month you shall keep it. 7 days you shall dwell in tabernacles, or as the Hebrew would say, booths. Every native in Yasharel shall dwell in tents, that your posterity may see that I made the children of Yasharel to dwell in tents when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I, Yahuwah your Elohim. And Moshe recounted the feast of Yahuwah to the children of Yasharel. That last verse is extremely important because you see the last verse of the chapter and the first verse of the chapter both iterating these are his feasts. His. So no one ethnic group can say that these belong to them and no one else can keep them. They're his. Anyway, so I just wanted to go into that and show kind of precedence of the origination of this feast. The purpose is that he made them to dwell in temporary dwellings, or you can even say modern word shelters. The purpose is, okay, he's making them dwell in basically these sukkahs, these huts, as temporary dwelling places to kind of almost humble them in a way. You're being humbled because you're not in houses, you're not in, you're basically, and even though they were already in huts, we could technically say, because they were already in the wilderness at this point. But the point is that he's trying to pass this generationally down as a memorial to their children to show them this is what Yahuwah had us dwell in before we came into the land. So that's kind of the purpose behind that. And we're going to see later on how this points to Yahusha, how the fact that the word for tabernacle literally from the Hebrew means to dwell, and how that points to John 1 and all that. So just FYI, for those of us that like to look into the original Greek and the Hebrew, the Greek for tent or tabernacle, or booth is skene, G4633, literally could be translated even as hut. And the Hebrew equivalent is H5521, Sukkot, booth. Okay. And again, I don't have it typed up here, but the first time you see that word is actually when Jacob goes to a place called Sukkot and actually makes himself a booth to dwell in. So very interesting. So let's see here. The next cross-reference we have here is Ezra. Actually, no, let's go in order here. Let's go to Exodus 23, verse 16. And we're going to go there next. So Exodus 23, chapter 23, verse 16. Okay. Exodus 23, 16. Mom, would you like to read it since you're already there?
Sure. Just the verse 16?
I would say you could read 17 as well,
Okay.
but I think those are the only two verses that actually go into this specific feast in that chapter.
Okay. All right. Celebrate the feast of harvest with the first fruits of the crops you sow in your field. Celebrate the feast of ingathering at the end of the year when you gather in your crops from the field. 3 times a year, all the men are to appear before the sovereign Elohim.
Mm-hmm. It says sovereign there?
Yeah, in the NIV, it does.
It's weird.
Excuse me.
You would think they would have it all caps Lord there because that's supposed to be Yahuwah. So that's kind of interesting.
It says sovereign, capital Lord.
Ah, yes. Ah, okay. So sovereign's Adonai. Okay, I see what they did there. Yeah. So let's see here. That was Exodus 23, 16 to 17. What we got here. So we also have another cross reference from Exodus here. Excuse me, guys, man. Throat's kind of tight today. Exodus 34, verses 22 to 23. Just check to see from you, Mom, if there's any other verses in that chapter that talk about Sukkot.
In 34?
Yeah.
I don't see anything.
Okay. I was just gonna double check. No problem. No problem at all. Just wanted to double check just to see. All right, so could you read those two verses for us?
Sure.
I think after you, I'll go to Brother Joshua.
Okay, so we're in 34.
Yeah.
And what
verses 22 to 23.
Okay.
So I think the last two verses pretty much.
Okay. Celebrate the Feast of Weeks with the first fruits of the wheat harvest and the Feast of Ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year, all your men are to appear before the sovereign Elohim, the Elohim of Yashrael.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much self-explanatory there. Pretty much self-explanatory with Exodus 34, 22 to 23. So yeah. So I think the major difference here is that the Septuagint says at the middle of the year, so it kind of lets you know that that Tabernacles is not the end of the year. I remember there was something weird about how the Masoretic words this, where it makes people think that Tabernacles is supposed to be the end of the year, which doesn't make any sense because you still got a couple more months before Abib happens. So to say it's the end of the year doesn't.
Yeah,
If you think about
that's
it
true.
logically, it doesn't make any sense. If you think about it, what month are we in biblically? With the 8th or something, the 8th or the 9th? There's 12 months in a year, so you really can't be at the end of the year yet. So that's where I side with the Septuagint. There it actually says in the middle of the year.
Yeah, we're like at the 7th month. If you're saying April is the Abib,
Well, March or
is it
April.
March?
It's
Okay.
it's either late
so
March
you're
or
talking
early
either
April.
7th or 8th month,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, so you still got like a quarter of a year to go. So yeah, so that's where I would definitely side with the Septuagint there. Yeah, and obviously 3 times in the year shall every male appear before Yahuwah, Elohim of Yasharal, and obviously this is the origination of that command where, in the Levitical priesthood, you're supposed to bring your tithes to the priest, and you're not to appear before Yahuwah empty-handed and all that, which, we're not in a Levitical priesthood. There's no way to keep that today. To not appear before him empty-handed. Number one, it actually says when you go further on into the scriptures, it gets more specific that, yeah, you're not supposed to appear before him empty-handed, but you're also supposed to go to his house to bring these offerings. I'll show you what I mean by this. Deuteronomy 16:16, 3 times in the year shall all your males appear before Yahuwah your Elohim in the place which Yahuwah shall choose in the feast of unleavened bread, feast of weeks, and the feast of tabernacles. You shall not appear before Yahuwah your Elohim empty. So the context later on was added that you can't just do this anywhere. You can't do this in your own homes. You can't give tithes in your own home. You can't give offerings in your own home, not to appear empty-handed. You had to go to the tabernacle or the temple. There was no way around it. So that's why I say today that this is kind of inapplicable. There's no way to apply that. Right. It's impossible. We're going to be honest with the text. Okay. So I know some people, they believe they can spiritually, do it in their own homes, but he's not talking about a spiritual offering. Right. He's talking about giving the fruits of the ground, your tithes and stuff like that. There's no way to spiritualize that. So this, even though scripture tells us to live as, to give ourselves as living sacrifices, which we do every day, that is not what Exodus 34:23 is talking about in context. Okay. So anyway, just wanted to clear that up. But anyway, so
what did we do?
We can't do it.
We memorialize.
How about if we pick our herbs or something and hang them on the tent? Could we do that?
That's not what that command is talking about, sis. That command is talking about that you would have to bring to the temple. And it's very clear in Deuteronomy 16, and that's what it's talking about. And as you read other places in the Torah about that offering, the 3 times in a year, there you would have to give your offering to the Levites. So there's no way to do that today. Like if you try to spiritualize it, then we're kind of falling into that Nadab Abihu area there.
We always go back to Daniel, right? As our example.
Daniel didn't do any of that in captivity. There's no hint that he was giving tithes in captivity, offerings in captivity. He was not doing that. He understood where he was in his situation. He knew he couldn't do that. And if he did do that, he would be sinning by doing it in his own way. So he knew this is what we have to fully understand, sis, is that sometimes we have to have patience and understand there are certain things in the Torah we cannot execute today. There are certain things that because of where we are, our situation, we have to realize the reality of certain things and that we can't spiritualize everything. I know it's like we feel bad that we can't give Yahuwah anything, but Yahuwah also foresaw that he knew we were not going to be able to do it. So
Mhm.
obviously it's not sin to us because he allowed it to happen. He allowed us to be in this situation. And he's not going to hold it against us that we can't do something that, because he tells us when you do something, you need to do it the way I prescribe it, not the way
Mhm.
you want to do it.
Yeah.
And we can't fall to the error of Cain and all that. We can't start saying, oh, we're I'm his temple. No, we're not. No, we're not. We can't be playing those games. Can't be playing those games. We are not the new temple, okay? You can't be spiritualizing a sacrificial system.
Mhm.
Sacrificial system is a physical, earthly system that we do not have right now. And I'm speaking to brothers and sisters out there that you know who you are, and you need you know who you are. I'm not going to name names, but you know who you are, and you need to stop playing around, stop trying to make sacrifices in your backyard,
Mhm.
stop doing stuff like that, because we're given Nadab and Abihu's strange fire incident for a reason in scripture. There's a reason Yahuwah points that out.
Mhm.
Okay, so we need to learn from the error of Cain. We need to learn from the error of Nadab and Abihu. These are all examples. These are all examples of maybe Cain didn't have the right heart, but Nadab and Abihu probably did think, oh, there's something wrong with this.
Mhm.
And there's tons of times in scripture. Another example, Saul, King Saul. What did he do? He thought, oh, I'll sacrifice, all these animals from the plunder and give it to Yahuwah as a burnt offering. Oh, what happened?
Mhm.
His kingship got stripped from him because he wanted to do things in his way, and he didn't want to do what Yahuwah told him to do, which is you utterly put everything under the ban. You don't give me those animals as a sacrifice.
Mhm.
So we need to be careful not to do that. So that's why I say, sis, the gathering of fruits, and another thing too is when he's talking about the gathering of the fruits of the earth, he's not talking about the crops in the land of captivity that we're in. He's talking about the land in the land. He's talking about the land he was giving to Israel, not if they're in Babylon. Whenever they were in captivity, they could never give offerings. And you see that constantly. The Syrian captivity, the Babylonian captivity, they were never able to give tithes and offerings in captivity. And it's a constant theme in scripture is that when they were brought captive, they understood there were certain things they couldn't do, but that doesn't mean they weren't righteous in captivity for keeping what they know they could keep. So hopefully that explains to you why we can't do these things.
I figured that out, but I was just wondering,
Yeah.
I mean, can we bring him anything from our own hearts? You know what I mean?
The only sacrifices that are laid out for us in the New
Yes.
Testament are bulls of our lips. As far as physical
Yeah,
sacrifices,
right. Okay, that sounds good.
yeah, I just wanted to explain to you that. I don't want you
Thank
to
you. No, thanks. I like, well, I tell you what, I learned right now the scripture backing of it, but I knew that there's no way we can bring offerings because the temple, we don't have a temple and we're not Levites, and maybe there's some hidden Levites out there. We don't know, but we don't know if they all died off, but I kind of think that somewhere there's a lineage and maybe a fourth left in the bloodline, if that, but I know that we can't do that until the two witnesses come.
Yeah, I believe we're not going to be able to do a lot of these sacrificial commands until the millennium. One of the main reasons is that scripture itself tells us the Levites will be picked by Yahuwah in the millennium. He even says, I will take some of you for Levites. So somehow Yahuwah kept a bloodline for the Levites somehow, whether it was the descendants of Zadok later on. Somehow he preserved a bloodline because he's going to be able to pick out Levites again when the millennium happens. So I believe a lot of this is not a lot of these sacrificial commands are not applicable until we have the 1,000-year reign. And I think he did that for a reason, because he knew that we were going to, first of all, he knew the majority of his people was not going to be in Jerusalem. He already foresaw that. So if you think about it, just common sense wise, it makes sense why he would have us in a Melchizedek priesthood transition period, because none of us would be able to go there. Plus now you got, in these end times, there's going to be a fake Levitical priesthood being instituted. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why he allowed that to happen, where now we're in a time period of, we're not even in a Levitical priesthood right now. And we're in a situation where if we were in one, honestly, it would be very difficult to be doing stuff within the Levitical priesthood, because you got to be in the land for a lot of things. A lot of people don't realize this. Letting the land rest is not you and your. Now I'm trying to be nice here, but you and your individual garden trying to let your crops rest. That's not what he meant by letting the land rest. He meant the whole land. The whole land. So that means like you can't be tilling or anything on that year of rest. So if you got a neighbor of yours, like 2-3 blocks down, tilling the ground on the year of a year of release, you're not able to keep that commandment just by that one neighbor, because the whole land's got to rest. So that's why I explain to people, there are certain things in the Torah we're not able to keep today. There are certain things, and just by alone us not being in the land he was going to give us, the fact that we're not in that land right now, you can't do the year of release fully. You can't. I can name about 20 or 30 different commands that are dependent on the land that we're not able to do right now. And another thing, I know a lot of people will say, well, didn't Daniel let the land rest? There's no hint that he was able to keep that command in Babylon. There's no hint of that. Yes, he grew crops, but there's no hint that he would have been able to offer any tithes of the field to Yahuwah. There's no hint that he would have been able to let the land rest. The fact that the Babylonians are not going to let their land rest, I mean, it's kind of defeats the purpose.
He realized where he was.
So that's why I say, like, when you start looking in things, there are certain things we have to hold off on. And there's certain things that we just got to have patience and realize eventually we're going to be able to keep, but we just can't keep right now. Go ahead, Mom.
I just wanted to say in line with this, obviously that is absolutely true. But having said that, I really believe in my heart, and I'm sure all of us sitting here do, that Father really, really delights in the fact that we are memorializing, that we are remembering his feasts, and we are setting these days apart for him. And I really think that that's of key importance right now, being that the prophetic clock is not ticking right now. We are on a hold. And he realizes that in this daughter of Babylon of ours, we can't be doing everything that was commanded. But I really do think he delights in the fact that we are setting his feast days apart. So I just wanted to say that.
And honestly, I think part of the reason he allowed this to happen was he knew his people was not going to get on the right page with him all at once. So him giving us this little bit at a time, being able to keep certain things, I think it's for our own good, because quite frankly, we're messing up with the little stuff. Yeah. We're not ready for the Levitical priesthood. I'm just gonna say that, brothers and sisters, right now, we ain't ready. I'm seeing all this craziness in the Hebrew Roots movement right now. Trust me, we ain't ready. We need to get down pat the easy stuff he's given us to be able to keep in captivity. You know what I'm saying? So trust me, we ain't ready. We think we are. We get all puffed up and prideful. Oh, I'm ready. No. Yeah. No. Because we need to get all on the same page of how to keep the Sabbath. We need to get all on the same page of how to do the basics.
That is the truth.
So, I know I'm going off on a little tangent right now, but
No, but I think it's good. There's a reason why he's going to teach us his law on Mount Zion. There's a reason why it says that.
we're messing up on Feast of Unleavened Bread. Certain of us, not even fully keeping that the way we should.
Even aside from keeping things, we're not ready as far as just our character.
Yeah.
Many of us are not ready, even in our character, bearing forth the fruit that we need to be, we need
Absolutely.
to have.
Yeah, I agree, brother.
No, I agree too.
Because there's certain things that I can even see in my own character that who's been working on this past year. So trust me, we're when I say we as a whole are not ready, we're not ready. Trust me. There's definitely a lot of things we each need to work out our own salvation and improve on. So I get the zealousness we have, and it's a good zealousness to have to want to fully keep the law, but we need to, as a secular saying goes, we need to learn to crawl before we walk. We need to learn to walk before we fly. So we need to get there step by step, and there's a reason Yahuwah is making it so that we can get there at the speed that we're getting there right now. Because quite frankly, if we were in a Levitical priesthood, we'd be in trouble right now. I can tell you right now, there would be even the heart situation. Most of us don't realize. Yeah.
Real quick, someone brought it up. I don't think we even prayed before starting.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Really?
A couple of people got in late, bro.
Yeah, that's what happened.
See, a lot of people got in late. That's what happened because we prayed.
I must have been in the restroom then at that time.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you did.
We did. What was it, on round 2 or something?
Yeah.
It was something like that.
It was right before you had me saying.
Because I think the confusion is we started the study so late. It's like almost 4 p.m. That's what happened.
I must have been in the restroom or something. I wasn't.
Okay, bro. No big deal. But yeah, I do want to just let people know. Yeah, we did. Mm-hmm. So, but going back to the. All right, go ahead, Brother Ray. Before we continue here, I was gonna choose a new reader as well. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I think I misunderstood you. Like, I typed something in the chat, but yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying, and I also think that lately I have been realizing, like, a lot of people, myself included, and it's good that we get zealous for the Torah, but I feel like a lot of times, and I'm not saying to stop doing that, I just noticed that, like, I will just say myself instead of speaking for others and people in general. But like, I got really zealous for the Torah, and I still am. And I want to be. And I never want that to change. I want to get more zealous, but I don't want to like forget about what Yahusha has done and what these things point to. And I don't say that in a Christian mindset where they're like, oh, it points to that, forget about it. No, it's like doing it with him in mind, and like the other day, because I try to study with my mom, so I try to like put a study together fast, and that's not good. I should probably take more time. I only put verses from the Torah, and it wasn't until I like came to the Zoom that I realized, like, wow, I completely forgot about Yahusha. That's not right. That's not good. So it was like a wake-up call,
Hallelujah on that. Yeah, I agree, definitely. And this time is a very joyous time. It's a very joyous feast. This is really supposed to signify a lot of things, especially Yahushua coming to the tabernacle among us, which we're going to read about later on in the study. Also, the fact that some say that it's very possible that this could be the exact feast that happens when the marriage of the Lamb happens in heaven. So, there's a lot of things that this feast points to, Sukkot points to. And I would like just before I go to Brother Joshua for the next reading, Numbers 29, I wanted just to piggyback off of what my mom said before about, his desire to dwell with us. And you see that all over the Tanakh. What's interesting, though, is that the tabernacle, though, signified not just individuals. Sometimes we get so focused on the individual tabernacles that the Israelites were commanded to dwell in at this time, but we forget that there was a tent of meeting in the wilderness. There was a tabernacle temple that he did command to be built.
Right.
That was a foreshadow to the temple in Jerusalem. So we should not lose sight of that. That him dwelling with us, and he did physically dwell with us, contrary to these rabbis, especially the Masoretes' belief systems, contrary to their belief systems, he did physically, not just his presence, he did physically one-on-one dwell with them in the tabernacle. And he physically left his throne, came to earth, and dwelled with us in the tabernacle in the wilderness. I think it's very important to remember that. It wasn't just his esteem. It wasn't just his splendor.
There was a physical representation in that temple. And that tabernacle.
Yeah, because I remember coming first into Torah way back when Yahuwah brought me in. I remember people kept saying, "Oh, his presence was in the tabernacle. It was his esteem." And I'm like, why is it so hard to understand that the Father could physically leave his throne? And
they're limiting him. They're limiting him by saying that.
I don't know. That just annoys me to no end. It just annoys me.
Yeah, for sure.
But and to be honest, his esteem is him. That's what people don't understand. Because Yahusha is the exact representation of the Father. I think Paul even calls him the esteem of the Father.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, somewhere in Paul's letters. So the fact you can't separate his splendor from himself. So anyway.
That's right.
Anyway, end of my tangent there. But but that's something that Yahuwah reminded me about, is that the Sukkots, these individual sukkahs we have, these Sukkots we have, these booths we have, ultimately in a way point to that tabernacle that he was dwelling with them in the wilderness. So anyway, so brother Yahusha, brother Joshua, are you able to read Numbers 29 12 to 28 for us?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you get there, and I'm gonna need some time to get there too. Let's see.
You said 12 to 20.
Yeah, 28.
Let me know when you're there.
Yep.
Okay. Real quick before I start that, I just want to read this verse about his esteem. Because it's interesting that I don't know if you read the chat. That's why you're bringing that up. But this was this Philippians 2 through 11. I just want to read this last part though. He who, while he was in the form of Yahuwah, did not esteem this as a prize, that he was the equal of Yahuwah, but he stripped himself and took the form of a servant, and was in the form of the children of men, and was found in fashion as a man. And he humbled himself and was obedient to death, even the death of the stake. Because of this, Yahuwah has also greatly exalted him, and he has given him the name which is greater than all names, that in the name of Yahusha every knee shall bow, which is in Shemayim and Haaretz, and which is under Haaretz, and every tongue shall confess that Yahusha the Messiah is Yahuwah, the esteem of the Father. That word that's normally translated to, where it says the Messiah is Yahuwah, to the esteem of the Father. When you look at that Greek word, it doesn't. You could put two, but when I look at the Strongs, it seems to be more like pointing to or pointing toward, kind of similar how the Hebrew at is. So it's like you have, okay, Yahushua the Messiah is Yahuwah, and then you have a Greek word that is pointing to the esteem. So you could really just honestly, you could get that same verbiage or that same meaning if you just said that Yahushua the Messiah is Yahuwah, the esteem of the Father. So it's literally like he's literally taking you back to Exodus 33:19 or through 23 when Masha asked to see the esteem of Yahuwah, and he shows him his fine parts. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Thank you, Josh. Well, that
Thanks.
was lovely.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Also, I think if people are interested, they can also go to Colossians. I think it's 1:16 that says he's the exact representation
Mhm.
of the Father. So he's the exact image. So he's any physical representation of the Father in Scripture would be Yahushua himself, like
Mhm.
Exodus 34 I read the other day, where he's talking about, you can't see me in my fullness, so I'm going to cover you with my hand, the right hand. So when Masha was speaking to Yahuwah face to face, he was actually speaking to Yahushua because he couldn't handle Yahuwah's fullness. Us as humans, we would like practically die if we were right before Yahuwah's fullness on earth.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. 12 to 28. And on the 15th day of this 7th month, there shall be a solemn festival set apart for you. So you shall do no sacrificial work, and you shall celebrate this festival to Yahuwah 7 days. And you shall bring for whole burnt offerings, for an offering of homage, for a smell of fragrance to Yahuwah on the first day, 13 young bulls from the herd, 2 rams, 14 lambs of the first year. They shall be without blemish. With their offerings, fine flour mixed up with oil, 3/10 for every one of the 13 bulls, and 2/10 for each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 for every one of the 14 lambs, and a kid of the goats for a sin offering, over and above the continual whole burnt offerings with their offerings and their libations. And on the second day, 12 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs the first year without blemish, with their offering and their libation for the bulls and the rams and the lambs, according to their number, agreeably to what is prescribed for them. And a kid of the goats for a sin offering, over and above the continual burnt offerings, with their offerings and their libations. And on the third day, 11 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs the first year without blemish, with their offerings and their libations for the bulls, the rams, and the lambs, according to their number, agreeably to what is prescribed to them. And a kid of the goats for a sin offering, over and above the continual whole burnt offerings with their offerings and their libations. And on the fourth day, 10 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs of the first year, without blemish, with their offerings and their libations for the bulls and the rams and the lambs, according to the number of them, agreeably to what is prescribed to them. And a kid of the goats for a sin offering, over and above the continual whole burnt offerings, their offerings and their libations. And on the fifth day, 9 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs of the first year, without blemish, with their offering and their libations for the bulls and the rams and the lambs, according to the number of them, agreeably to what is prescribed for them. And a kid of the goats for a sin offering, over and above the continual whole burnt offerings, with their offerings and their libations. And on the sixth day, 8 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs of the first year without blemish, with their offerings and their libations for the bulls and the rams and the lambs, according to the number of them, agreeably to what is prescribed for them. And a kid of the goats for a sin offering, over and above the continual whole burnt offerings, with their offerings and their libations. And on the seventh day, 7 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs first year without blemish, with their offerings, their libations, the bulls and the rams and the lambs, according to the number of them, agreeably to what is prescribed for them. and a kid of the goats for a sin offering over and above the continual whole burnt offerings with their offerings and their libations. And on the 8th day you shall close the festival. On that day you shall not do any kind of sacrificial work, but you shall bring for whole burnt offerings, for a smell of fragrance, for offerings of homage to Yahuwah, one young bull, one ram, 7 lambs of the first year, without blemish, for their offerings and their libations, for the bull and the ram and the lambs, according to the number of them, agreeably to what is prescribed for them. And a kid of the goats for a sin offering over and above the continual whole burnt offerings, with their offerings and their libations. These you shall offer to Yahuwah at your festivals over and above your vows, your freewill offerings, and your whole burnt offerings, and your offerings, and your libations, and your offerings of thanksgiving. Is that where you wanted me to stop?
Oh, you went a little bit farther, bro.
That's okay, it was
that was
good.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah, I know you said 28, but I saw that it was still going, like,
yeah,
where you had me stop was like halfway through the off,
That's
halfway
true.
through the beat.
yeah,
So I just
yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah, I didn't realize that chapter also talks about the offerings for the 8th day as well. So I'm glad you actually went through that.
No, that was good.
So what's interesting here is a lot of the animals they're sacrificing here for all these 8 days of the feast is all of them seem to point to Yahusha. You got the ram, the lambs, the fact that it's a 1-year-old lamb. All these will spiritually point to Yahusha. And this, even though we can't do these sacrifices, quote unquote, today, what we can do though is understand what Yahuwah is trying to show us through these sacrifices of the Levitical priesthood and how they point to Yahusha. The fact that it was a ram in a thicket, Genesis 22, points to Yahusha.
Yeah.
Most of these sacrifices do. Almost every one of them do. So I also find it interesting. You have the goat for the sin offering. Find that interesting.
Yeah.
So
That points to something too.
well, you have atonement with the goat for the sin offering. So probably that signifies atonement for sin, that particular sacrifice, which Yahusha fulfilled on the Day of Atonement. Trying to see if there's anything else. I find it very interesting, the Septuagint, whenever it talks about end, it says release, uses the word release for like the 8th day of the feast. I found that interesting too. So I guess in a way it's like it's a closing day of the week-long feast. I guess it's the reason why it says release. So trying to see where we're going to next. I think we're going to Numbers chapter 10 next. And let me just see. Specifically, I want to focus on this chapter where it talks about the days of gladness and all of that. Yeah. So it says here in Numbers 10:10, it says, and in the days of your gladness, and days of your feasts, and in your new moons, you shall sound with the trumpets at your whole burnt offerings and at the sacrifice of your peace offerings. There shall be a memorial for you before your Elohim. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. So I like the fact that this verse says at the days of your gladness. So obviously we could say that references to Sukkot, because Sukkot's like one of the few feasts Yahuwah actually commands us to be joyful, to be glad. I mean, there's, the one we just had, the appointed time we just have, atonement, was more of a solemn, full, self-reflective type of festival, or Moedim. This feast week, you could even not just say feast day, but feast week. It's all about being joyful. It's all about, realizing that the joy of Yahuwah is our strength. It's all about, even being generous. When they were in the land, they were able to send portions to those that didn't have none. I guess in a spiritual way today, we could, send, portions to those that don't have any, of our brothers and sisters that don't have any. In that context, though, it was like pretty much it was talking about the poor that lived in the land, the widows that lived in the land, the Levites that lived in the land, that lived among them. So, but yeah, this to me is Days of Gladness. Definitely to me, definitely brought up tabernacles in my opinion. So that's the reason I wanted to read that scripture there. Go ahead, Brother Ray. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Oh, that must have been an old hand or something. Okay, never mind. Let me just see here the next verse we got going on here. All of a sudden, I don't know why it closed out. So we just did Numbers 10, chapter 10, verse 10 there. I think the next one we're going to have here. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to correct this because the translation I was reading from was the Charles Thompson, and it says there shall be a solemn festival for you. I think that's like really off because it's supposed to be a set apart convocation or set apart festival. I don't know why he put solemn there. That's very strange. But yeah, I
Yeah,
just wanted to.
yeah, I agree, bro. That's especially in the context of what festival it's talking about. That's kind of weird. That's little strange. But yeah, I think some people mistaken solemn as meaning supposedly set apart. I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's more of a tradition of the church, how they confuse those two words. Solemn usually means like it's a humbling experience when you're solemnly doing something. You're denying yourself. You're in repentance. You're actually you're abasing yourself pretty much. That's the best definition I could give. You're humiliating yourself spiritually. So let's see here. Deuteronomy 14, verse 26 to 27. We're going to go to that next. My mom's just taking a little intermission break here, so I'm kind of just trying to buy time for her. Okay, so Deuteronomy 14, 26 to 27. I'll just give time for everyone to get there. All right, so, and you shall give, now, obviously money is not the original word, so I'm just, I guess you could say, you shall give the commerce or goods for whatever your soul shall desire, for the oxen and for the sheep and for the wine. You know what? Since we want to get out actually the context of this, I think I'm going to move it up a little bit. I'm going to start a little bit earlier in the chapter here. So we're at Deuteronomy 14, Mom.
Okay.
Let me just try to find where this starts. Okay. All right, so now we were just talking about the tithing, right? The tithing of the feast and all that. So this is what is actually going to get into it here. All right, so starting at verse 22 of Deuteronomy 14. You shall tithe a tenth of all the produce of your seed, the fruit of your field, year by year. You shall eat it in the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to have his name called there. You shall bring the tithe of your grain and of your wine and of your oil, firstborn of your herd and of your flock. You may learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim always. Mm-hmm. And if the journey be too far for you and you are not able to bring them because the place far from you, which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to have his name called there, because Yahuwah your Elohim will barak you, then you shall sell them for money or commerce, and you shall take the money in your hands, and you shall go to the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose, and you shall give the money for whatsoever your soul shall desire, for oxen or sheep, or for wine, or laid out on strong drink, or whatsoever your soul may desire, you shall eat there before Yahuwah your Elohim, and you shall rejoice. You shall rejoice in your house, and the Levite that is in your cities, because he has not a portion or inheritance with you. After 3 years, you shall bring out all the tithes of your fruits in that year. You shall lay it up in your cities, and the Levite shall come, because he has no part or lot with you, and the stranger and the orphan, the widow, which is in your cities, and they shall eat and be filled, that Yahuwah your Elohim may barak you in all the works which you shall do. So we were just talking about this. So the whole context of this with the tithes, the festival tithes and all that, is that the tithes had to be brought to the temple. And then we see that here. Even when he sells the animals, right? Because, it's too long of a journey to go to the temple. So he's selling the animals, selling the livestock for money, and he's bringing the money. He still has to go to the temple. This is what people miss right here, is that it actually says here, if the journey be too far to go where Yahuwah has put his name, you shall sell them for money, right? But read on in the same verse, you shall take the money in your hands, and you shall go to the place which your Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose. Does not say go to the place you choose. This is one of the pet peeves I have, is people take this verse, try to spiritualize it. You can't spiritualize that. It's still telling you to go to the temple. It's still you're not getting around that. I just want to be honest with my brothers and sisters here. You're still going to the same place that he put his name at. The only difference is, instead of dragging your animals and stuff, you're bringing money with you because you sold them for money. See what I'm saying? So that's the only difference. So that's what he's saying, is that your two options: either you could bring your livestock, your animals, and everything that you're going to give as tithes, or you can sell them in your towns and bring money with you because the journey is very far. That's the context there. But what's interesting too about this is that when you bring that money there, you're actually spending this tithe actually on yourself and others with you. So you're eating of the festival tithe, and those that are with you are rejoicing. So it says, you shall give the money for whatsoever your soul shall desire, oxen, sheep, wine, strong drink, whatever your soul may desire, that you eat before Yahuwah your Elohim, you shall rejoice in your house. So what a lot of people don't understand too is that when the Levitical priesthood came in, you were not keeping the feasts at your own home anymore. Almost every feast you had to go to Jerusalem, to the temple.
That's right.
Almost every feast. Technically you could say Passover, the night of Passover, you were keeping the meal of Passover at your home, but that's like the only time. Every other time you're going to the temple to keep the feasts. You see that all the time. So again, taking care of the Levites that are in your cities. Okay, so obviously no little Levitical priesthood today. There's no way to take care of a Levite. Okay, and it has to be a Levite that's within your cities. So again, a lot of this had to do with the land as well. You'll notice it say in your cities, or those that live among you. It was always, these type of commandments were always depending on, Israel being in the land. So again, even the fruits of the ground says, the fruits of the ground of your field to lay it up in your cities. So again, a lot of people don't understand this. This is what the context of a storehouse is when you see in the book of Malachi. Okay, Malachi says you store up, if you were to bring grain into the storehouses, if you were to do this and do that, you would have food. The tithes had nothing to do with commerce. Tithes had to do with your crops, your livestock, your fruits of the ground. That was the tithes. And you were supposed to bring them to Jerusalem. That's the main thing we can take away from this chapter. to Jerusalem. They had to go. Okay. And also, I think the lesson here to be learned is Yahuwah intended his people to take care of one another, because the Levite had no portion. You take care of the Levite that lives within you, and the poor and the widow. So anyway, so I just thought I would bring that up. So I think we're gonna move on here. Let's see here. Okay. Let me just check in with everyone here. Okay, so hopefully that explains a little bit there. So now we're going to go down. We still got a couple more from Deuteronomy 16. I'm going to double check and make sure those are all the verses I want to go through. And I think I'm going to pick a new reader for Deuteronomy 16, 13 to 17. So let's see here. We got. Let me just make sure these are all the ones. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, Brother Ray, if it's possible, could you read Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 13 to 17 for us?
Yep.
All right.
I'm just gonna read the TS 2009 just because I really, really, really hate the old English sounding things. So hope that's all right.
Yeah, no problem.
Alrighty. Okay. So, all right. Verse 13 to 17, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Perform the festival of booths for 7 days after the ingathering from your threshing floor and your winepress. And you shall rejoice in your festival, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant and your female servant and the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates. For 7 days you shall celebrate to Yahuwah your Elohim in the place which Yahuwah chooses, because Yahuwah your Elohim does bless you in all your increase and in all the work of your hands, and you shall be only rejoicing. 3 times a year all your males appear before Yahuwah your Elohim in the place which he chooses, at the festival of Matzot, at the festival of Shavuot. I'm probably butchering these, by the way. And at the festival of Sukkot. And none should appear before Yahuwah empty-handed, but each one with the gift of his hand, according to the blessing of Yahuwah your Elohim, which he has given you.
Okay. I think that's about it. Let's see this. Yeah. So again, you see the command about the 3 times in the year, all the males were to appear before him. And by the way, appearing before Yahuwah was a physical thing. That was appearing before him in the temple in Jerusalem. That's what it means to appear before him. Because once you go into the most set apart place, that's where he was. He was, that the whole purpose of the Ark of the Covenant and all that was, essentially that was a copy of the mercy seat in heaven. So, Yahuwah came down in his presence and his esteem from heaven to earth in that area of the temple. So, when they're saying appearing before Yahuwah, we got to be careful not to spiritualize that. It's talking about a physical thing. So again, just trying to see here. And again, he's not trying to put a heavy burden on those when this is applicable. Again, he says, give to each one according to his ability, according to the Barak of Yahuwah your Elohim, which he has given you. So, he's not trying to put a heavy burden on us. He knows some are not as brute with, possessions as others. There's even something I think in the Torah. What is it? Those that have abundant will give more than those that have little, and all that. So, Yahuwah tries to make it fair too in his Torah. He only asks you of what he knows you're able to give. So, just thought I would add that there. So I think we're getting closer and closer to the Brit Hadashah stuff here. So I think we're up to Deuteronomy 31, 10 to 12. Just double check for me, Mom, and see if there's any more verses in that chapter that deal with the feast.
Okay, in the one we just left?
No. In chapter 31 of Deuteronomy.
Okay.
I just want to see if there's any more than just 3 or 4 verses. Have assembled the people.
Yeah, it's in that portion that.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think I see anything else.
All right.
Specifically.
Okay. All right, so we'll start at verse 10 here. Deuteronomy 31 verses 10. I think we'll end at 13 there. Okay, so it says here, and Moshe charged them in that day, saying, after 7 years, in the time of the year of release, in the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Yasharel comes together to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim in the place which Yahuwah shall choose, you shall read this law before all Yasharel in their ears, having assembled the people, the men and the women, the children, and the stranger that is in your cities, that they may hear and that they may learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim. They shall hearken to do all the words of this law, and their sons who have not known shall hear and shall learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim all the days that they live upon the land into which you go over the Jordan to inherit it. So first thing I'm noticing here is the reading of the law is specifically for the year of release. Even though we do it every year as a nice tradition for the Week of Tabernacles, we go through the Torah and all that. It really, as a command, it's really only supposed to be given as a command for the year of release. And it seems like it's tied to the land as well. Because it does say in the last verse there in verse 13, all the days that they live upon the land into which you go over to the Jordan to inherit it. So it seems to be the context is they're gathering everyone in their cities to read the Torah during the year of release at Sukkot. That seems to be the context there. We personally do it every year, FYI, just because, quite frankly, we don't know what year is the year of release at this point. So just to play it safe, we do it as a nice tradition during the week of Sukkot. We read through the Torah and all that.
He knows we don't know.
Yeah, obviously. He knows we lost track of his calendar and his time. So yeah. I don't think there's anything else to expound on from that. Yeah, so, and the reason I'm not choosing different readers for 2 or 3 verses, I'm just trying to go through it quick, guys. Sure. I mean, if there's a decent sized reading, I'll definitely choose new readers and stuff like that. But a lot of this is like 1 verse here, 1 verse there. 2 Chronicles 8 verse 13. 2 Chronicles 8 verse 13. Okay, so let me just see if there's anything else here. Okay. It's 1 little verse here. So in context, this is about the building of the temple by Solomon here. So it says here, 2 Chronicles 8 verse 13. According to the daily rate to offer up, according to the commandments of Moshe on the Sabbaths and at the new moons and at the feast 3 times in the year, and at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and at the Feast of Weeks, and at the Feast of Tabernacles. What's interesting here is he's saying, according to the commandment of Moshe, to offer on new moons. But we never, ever see Moshe, at least our version of the Torah of Moshe, we never see commandments in the first 5 books about the new moons. So I find that a little interesting, like a little hint to that something has been taken away here, because you really don't see that unless I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but you don't see any. I mean, the the most you're going to get for commandments for the new moon in the Torah, the books that they call the Torah today, the first 5 books would be like you're blowing the trumpets on the new moons and all that. But it rarely ever speaks about these commands that are for the new moon. And even the cross-reference we have here don't mention the new moons. So I find that interesting. I find that little tidbit kind of interesting. So it's very possible in the original Torah that Moshe wrote, that we don't have today, by the way, there could have been more explicit things about the new moons, especially the sacrifices. So anyway, I find that interesting. So we're going to go to Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 17 to 18. Nehemiah 8. See here. It says here in Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 17 to 18, and all the congregation who had returned from the captivity made booths and dwelled in booths, for the children of Yashrael had not done so from the days of Yahusha, son of Nun, until that day, and there was great joy. So interesting. And actually, you know what? I'm seeing a couple of verses earlier, actually, that we could include here. Hold on. Let's actually start in verse 14. I think this is important. It says, in Nehemiah 8, verse 14, it says, and they found written in the law, which Yahuwah commanded Moshe, that the children of Yashrael should dwell in booths in the feast in the 7th month, and they should sound with trumpets in all their cities in Jerusalem. So it seems like Nehemiah and Ezra kind of took the same approach we're taking. They're kind of like, you know what, screw it. Because, I mean, if you think about it, too, they're in Babylon for that long. Obviously, they would have missed the year of release at that point, So, and that they should sound with trumpets in all their cities and in Jerusalem and Ezra, and go forth to the mountain and bring olive branches and branches of cypress trees, branches of myrtle, branches of palm trees, branches of thick trees to make booths according to that which was written. We kind of talked about this last year. It doesn't really command them to have to use those type of trees to make the booths. This is kind of like the start of what we would call today as being extra guardrails around the command here. Nehemiah's he's kind of adding a little things here, saying that he's there to use those exact branches to make the booths. Yahuwah doesn't even say that you have to make brand new booths. He says to dwell in booths. You see what I'm saying? It's not an actual command to make brand new booths. But most likely what happened was them being in Babylon for 70 years. Who's going to have a booth that's already pre-made?
No.
So, again, you can see why he's commanding the people to do that. So, and then verse 16, and the people went forth and brought and made booths for themselves, each one upon his roof, and in their courts, and in the courts of the house of Yahuwah, and in the streets of the city, and as far as the gate of Ephraim. So pretty interesting. Some of them are making booths actually inside the temple. Interesting. Or at least the courts of the temple. Okay. And all the congregation who had returned from captivity made booths and dwelt in booths, for the children of Yashrael had not done so from the days of Yahusha, son of Nun, until that day, and there was great joy. And Ezra read in the book of the law of Yahuwah daily from the first day even to the last day, and they kept the feast 7 days, and on the 8th day, this is what Brother Joshua was talking about before. I don't know why these translators do this. Should not say solemn. I have a pet peeve about that. So it should say this is where it gets confusing here. The ABP translates it better. It says a set apart day recess. Okay, that makes sense. because recess is rest. So set apart day of rest. That makes a lot better translation than solemn. The problem I have with solemn is solemn means that it's different. Like you're not going to be joyful if it's solemn.
Right.
Solemn,
True.
I'm just saying that kind of, especially for the context of tabernacles, that doesn't make any sense. So it should say the 8th day was a set apart day of assembly or recess according to the ordinance. So that was Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 14 to 18. Okay, so let's go to the next one we have here, which I believe we got one more from the Tanakh. Actually, two more from the Tanakh. I did want to go into this, Numbers 15 to 16, because I know a lot of people will say it says native born only. And a lot of people, say in Leviticus 23 says only native born can keep it. But I'm going to show you guys in the book of Numbers here, Yahuwah says there's one law for the stranger and for the natural born Israelite. Okay. So Numbers 15 to 16. So Numbers chapter 15, verses 15 to 16. There shall be one law for you and for the strangers abiding among you, a perpetual law for your generations. As you are, so shall the stranger be before Yahuwah. There shall be one law and one ordinance for you and for the stranger that abides among you. So again, we see here that if you're going to be grafted in, if you're going to convert and be a Hebrew, then you have to keep what the natural borns are keeping. And it's very clear there. So, yeah, so that's self-explanatory there. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 8 to 10. Okay. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 8 to 10. Let's just see if there's anything else here. Okay, yeah, so I think that's it. So 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 8. And Solomon kept the feast at that time for 7 days, and all Yasharal with him, a very great assembly from the entering in of Hamath and as far as the river of Egypt. And on the 8th day, he kept a solemn assembly, for he kept, he kept a set apart assembly, for he kept a feast of 7 days as the dedication of the altar. Okay. And on the 23rd day of the 7th month, he dismissed the people to their tents, rejoicing with a glad heart because of the Tob deeds which Yahuwah had done to David and to Solomon and to Yasharal his people. Now, I wonder if Solomon kept this feast 7 extra days, because it says the 23rd day of the 7th month. Let me see here. The 15th day of the 7th month is the first. Oh, no. He would have kept it maybe not a whole extra week, but a couple extra days, because think about it. The 15th to the 21st is 7 days. So the 23rd, they're going back to their tents. Yeah, they're at least keeping Sukkot for extra 2 days. So Solomon finished the house of Yahuwah and the king's house, and whatever Solomon willed in his heart to do in the house of Yahuwah and his own house, he prospered. Now, I'm just kind of curious here, because he says he kept the feast in verse 9 as the dedication of the altar. I kind of wonder if what the Maccabees did with rededicating the altar and now making a feast of rededication. I kind of wonder if they're taking from what Solomon did and trying to make it into a law. I don't know. I kind of wonder, because it seems very similar. It's talking about he kept a feast as the dedication of the altar. You see what I'm saying? So it's very similar. So I wonder where the origin of the feast of dedication, if that has any link to 2 Chronicles 8. I just kind of wonder. Yeah. So no, It's actually Second Chronicles chapter 7. My bad, guys. 7, 8 to 10 is where it talks about that. He kept the feast as the rededication of the altar. So now we're done with the first part of the study. Now we're going to the prophetic meaning of the feast, of this feast. I think it would be important to go to John chapter 1 first. So we're going to go to John chapter 1. Let's see here. I think we'll start with verse 1 here. In the beginning was the Word was with Yahuwah, the Word was Yahuwah. He was in the beginning with Yahuwah. All things came to be by him, and without him nothing came to be which has came to be. In him was the life, and the life was the light of men, and light shines in the darkness, and darkness cannot comprehend it. Okay, there was a man sent from Yahuwah whose name John. This came for a witness, so that he might witness concerning the light, so that all through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent so that he might testify concerning the light. That was the true light which lightens every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, he gave them authority to become children of Yahuwah, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of Yahuwah. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his esteem, the esteem as of the only begotten of the Father, full of favor and truth. So what's interesting is in the Hebrew language, to dwell literally is the same word for, tabernacle, Sukkot. So many out there, I know we got some brothers and sisters that believe so, which to me is not a big deal if he was born, during this feast or during Yom Teruah. It's really a moot point to me.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if he was born during Sukkot. So I know there's huge debates and arguments out there. I'm not trying to get into all that. Whenever Yahushua was born, it's really not something that Yahuwah is really wants us to know anyway, the day of his birth. The point of the matter is that he tabernacled among us. So this feast does point to him taking on flesh, the eternal living word, taking on flesh, dwelling among us. That's the point. So, but I know there's heated debates about which feast day he would have been born on and yada yada. But I'm not trying to get into all that. Yeah, brother Ray. Yeah, they paraphrased a little bit in Nehemiah 8. They're like, "Oh yeah, let's take these leaves we're supposed to wave with, and let's just use that to make the tents." Because the actual original command about the thick bows and all that, when you read in Leviticus 23, they're supposed to wave them praising Yahuwah, like the waving of the branches. That was like the original intent of the thick bows and all that. So they were kind of like, all right, we have no sukkahs anyway, so we might as well just use these to build them. And you see him like telling them to put the sukkahs on their roofs and all that. And, Nehemiah, it's funny, certain Catholic Bibles will like put a little header on that chapter saying the beginning of Judaism, quote unquote.
Oh.
So they think like there's this stupid tradition that Nehemiah was like the first rabbi or whatever. There's some stupid tradition like that. But anyway, go ahead, Brother Ray.
I was gonna say that when I used to be in the other group, they used to say to go and get branches and leafy things and stuff like that and put it on top of your tent. And right before I left, I guess they kind of realized, like, they're like, oh well, we don't see that anywhere in the Torah. We kind of learned that from somewhere else, so we're gonna stop doing that. And so this was like kind of the first year that I actually just like got branches and just waved them instead of putting them on the tent.
Yeah. Yeah, the waving, the putting them on the tent is a nice tradition, but definitely should not be commanded. It's like one of the nice little traditions they would have for this weekly feast. I found out a couple nice traditions last night that I'm going to start implementing just as a optional thing. I noticed that surprisingly they read certain interesting chapters during this week, even from the prophets that I would have never thought they would read, like Isaiah 12 is read during the Feast of Tabernacles in Judaism. So I kind of find that interesting because Isaiah 12, Yahusha's all over that chapter. So I kind of find that interesting. Also, supposedly, traditionally, they read Psalms chapter 118 during the week of Sukkot. So there's little traditions I think are very harmless. But I think the problem is, like you were just mentioning, is when we turn that into a command.
Right.
And that's what the Pharisees did. That's what the Masoretes would do as well after them. They started taking nice little added traditions to things and little extra guardrails, you could say. And they started making them like have tos, and we have to do this. You have to put it on your tent, and all that. Unfortunately, we as humans are very inclined to become rabbinical for some reason. And that's something we got to struggle within with our flesh a lot, is not adding to his word. So that's just something that I'm constantly reminding myself about. But yeah, I put him on my little temporary dwelling. I have no problem doing that. I don't tell the fellowship that is commanded. I do it as a nice little tradition, but I don't keep it as a commandment. I just do it as decoration, really. But yeah, that's a very two point you brought out. So let's see here. I think we're done with the Tanakh. We just read John 1:14. I think let's go to, actually we got one more we got a couple of references from the Tanakh still, actually. My bad about that. Zechariah 14. Yeah, we're going to go to, because we got a couple of verses actually from that I want to go to. Especially if we have any Christian viewers here, I would like to just show how important it is, and that obviously this shows this shadow is not done away with. Okay. So let's start with trying to see where it starts here. So let's start at verse 16. Zechariah chapter 14, verse 16. I'm reading from the Complete Apostles Bible here. And it shall come to pass, whoever shall be left of all the nations that came against Jerusalem shall come up every year to worship the King, Yahuwah Almighty, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Verse 17, shall come to pass, whichever of all the families of the earth shall not come up to Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahuwah Almighty, even these shall be added to the others. Now, your version might say, no rain. Right. Yeah, it's a lot worse than that. Those that don't want to worship him and keep the Feast of Tabernacles, he's going to add to all those that fought against Jerusalem. Like they're going to be destroyed. Okay, so yeah, Yahuwah is very serious about his feasts. He's very serious. And then he goes on even to say in verse 18, and if the family of Egypt shall not go up nor come, then upon them shall be the plague with which Yahuwah shall smite all the nations, whichever of them shall not come up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This shall be the sin of Egypt and the sin of all the nations that shall not come up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So I would say it actually ends at verse 19 there. So you could say Jeremiah 14, verses 16 to 19. So obviously see there the importance of keeping the Feast of Tabernacles. And it's a millennium context, by the way. It's a second coming context. Okay, so let's see here. What else we got? I think we got one in Isaiah as well. Isaiah 55, chapter 55, verse 2. Okay, so Isaiah 55, verse 2. So it says here, why do you value at the price of money in your labor for that which does not satisfy? Hearken to me, and you shall eat that which is tobe. Your soul shall feast itself on the tobe things. Give heed with your ears and follow my ways. Hearken to me, and your soul shall live in prosperity, and I will make with you an eternal covenant, the sure mercies of David. Okay, so the reason I wanted to read Isaiah 55 verse 2 specifically is Yahusha actually quotes from this in the book of John. So let's go to John 7, I believe it is, where he's at the last great day of the feast, right? John 7 verse 37. So John chapter 7 verse 37. Actually, let's I got a couple other references from that chapter. So let's start with John 7, 2-3 first. So let's go to John 7, 2-3. So it says, now the Judean feast of tabernacles was near. And we'll expound on that after I read. We'll expound on why it's called the Judean or Yahudim feast. I'll explain that. You got to know a little bit about history of the first century. His brothers therefore said to him, depart from here and go into Yahuda, so that your disciples also may see the works that you do. For no one does anything in secret while he himself seeks to be known publicly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world, for not even his brothers believed in him. Then Yahusha said to him, my time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. You see here, he's giving a little attitude to his brothers. Now we're going to jump down to verse 37 in this same chapter here. Now on the last day, the great of the feast, Yahusha stood and crying out, saying, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. He that believes in me, as the scripture says, out of his belly will flow rivers of living water. I think verse 39 is important to read as well. But this he spoke concerning the Spirit, or Ruach, whom those believing in him were about to receive. For the set-apart Ruach was not yet given, because Yahusha was not yet esteemed. Now, I want to expound on that, because certain people will say, well, see, Doug, that means his spirit was never given. No. It's talking about an outpouring of the Spirit. It's not saying that Yahuwah never gave his Ruach to any other human before Pentecost. I know that's how the church will interpret this verse. That's not what it's talking about, though. Because then you have John contradicting the book of, I think it's Numbers 11, I believe, where the first outpouring happens. Okay. So obviously, John's not trying to contradict the Torah. What he's saying here is that his followers have not yet received the fullness of the Spirit, because what was going to happen was that there was going to be a partial outpouring happening in Acts chapter 2 that hadn't happened yet. So that's what it's talking about. Now, going back up to earlier in the chapter, just to expound on why it's called the Feast of the Yahudim. What you got to understand is who were in covenant with Yahuwah at this point. Was all 12 tribes in covenant with him at this point? No. Okay. The Yahudim, in a cultural sense, the Judeans did not just encompass one tribe. At that point in time, traditionally, the southern house were called Judeans. So that include Benjamites, that includes some of Levi. Okay. The southern house that came back from Babylon, they were lumped up in one category called Judeans. Okay, so just because they were inhabitants of Judea. That makes any sense. So that's why you'll see it saying, like, even in the chapter about the Passover in the New Testament, it'll say the feast of the Judeans, the Passover. Okay, that's the reason it says that. It's not saying that it only belongs to the Judeans. That's where Christianity gets the weird idea that it's only for Jewish people, when they don't realize the context of the historical context of that terminology. That terminology had to do with who was in covenant in the land physically. Very few Ephraimites and Gadites and Naphtalites were even left in the land at that point. The only those of the northern house that would be in that land were those that were left behind that didn't go to the Assyrian captivity. So you got to know a little bit about history when you're looking at stuff like that. You got to know a little bit about the history of Yahuwah's people and who actually came back into the land around 1st century AD. And you got to kind of like have a little knowledge of that to understand that. So anyway, I just wanted to expound upon that because I know it gets confusing, it gets misunderstood. So anyway, so that's what it means by Feast of the Judeans. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I think the next one we got here is Revelations 22, 1-2, which is again going to talk about the fountain of living waters, Yahusha, which we just read about in John chapter 7. So we're going to go to Revelations 22, 1-2. So here we go at verse 1 here. And he showed me a pure river of the water of life, bright as crystal, proceeding from the throne of Yahuwah and of the Lamb. So we see here, right here, so we got the river that's coming from Yahuwah's throne is pure, bright like crystal. That's interesting. Since, the first heaven is the rakia, the firmament, and it's like a hard beaten down structure that is sometimes like a hard crystal type of structure. So that's interesting to me. Let's see here. So it says in verse 2, in the middle of the street on both sides of the river, the tree of life producing, if you have to.
I don't want to put that on, honey.
Producing 12 fruits, each yielding its fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree for the healing of the nations. Yeah. So we see here the connection here with Yahusha, with the living water and all that. And Mom, where's that other cross reference in the New Testament where he's talking to the Samaritan woman? That's chapter 4, right, of John?
John, I know.
Yeah, John 4, I think. I think it would be beneficial to read that as well. Let's see here. So, let's see here. So starting at verse 10 in chapter 4 of John, Yahusha answered and said to her, if you had known the gift of Yahuwah, who it was that says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him. He would have given you living water. And the woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank of it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock? Yahusha answered and said to her, whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water which I shall give him will by no means ever thirst again, but the water which I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into eternal life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw. And Yahusha said to her, go call your husband, come here. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. And Yahusha said to her, you have said it well, you have no husband, for you have 5 husbands, and the one you are with right now is not your husband. In this you have said truly. And the woman said to him, sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain. So she's talking about Gerizim and all that, because she's a Samaritan. And you say that in Jerusalem is the place where it is necessary to worship. Yahusha said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain or in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because salvation is of the Yahudim. But the hour is coming, now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such to worship him. Yahuwah is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. And obviously it goes on to say that she realizes he's the Messiah and all that. But we see here that Yahusha is dealing with the Samaritan woman. He's saying, he's probably foreshadowing here. Yeah, I'm just saying Yahuwah, brother, just because a lot of the times Elohim will be placed there where even in the New Testament a lot, they'll have Theos where in context it should be Kurios there. Because unfortunately the tradition of using Elohim as a name came into be way before the New Testament was even written. So the rabbis would start using Elohim and all that and that. So I on purpose read it out loud as Yahuwah because I know that's what it should be there as a name rather than a title being used as his name. So just to explain why I'm doing that. Go ahead, brother Yahusha. I see you got your hand up.
It's been a long time since I've looked into it, but I know that historians have found evidence that at one point, rather than because like when you look in the Old Testament, you have Yahuwah in way more places than in the New Testament. In the New Testament, like Kurios in reference to Yahuwah is like you rarely ever see it. So you can see that like that the Greek has been there's been a lot more traditions come into the Greek translation than than the Tanakh. But they found historical evidence that Yahuwah was there a lot more often. Aside from that, like personally, whenever it said if I see it say even if it's in translation, just because I know that it's based off of a tradition, if they have Elohim there as a name, I'm gonna read it as Yahuwah because Elohim is not a name; it's what he is. So, in the context of even if I look in the manuscript and I see it says Alua, personally, I just can't read it like that because I know that um, that's a tradition, not and it shouldn't be there, even if it is a manuscript.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, bro. Another proof of this is the Targum on Kalos shows that the Tetragrammaton is supposed to be there a lot more even in the Tanakh, even to your point. I've seen at times where the Masoretic will have Elohim all throughout Genesis 1, but when you look at the Targum on Kalos, it has the substitution Lord there. So it's showing that Yahuwah was supposed to be all the way through Genesis 1. So it should have been in the beginning, Yahuwah created the heavens and the earth rather than in the beginning, Elohim. And Brother Ray, you could look this up for yourself. Encyclopedia Britannica historically has proof of this, that they started using Elohim after the Babylonian captivity as a traditional title to reference to Yahuwah because they felt they didn't need to use his name anymore because he was sovereign over all the other mighty ones. This is like an actual rabbinical tradition that is documented even in the Encyclopedia Britannica. So this is like not like conspiracy theory. This is like actually fact historically what happened. So even if it's in a manuscript as his name, like Brother Joshua was saying, that doesn't mean it's supposed to be there. So the fact of the matter is Elohim is a generic title. It's used for Yahuwah. It's used for angels. It's sometimes in the Masoretic text is even used for mortal judges and rulers. It's very generic. There's so to fully respect the Father, that's why me and Joshua, Brother Yahusha, will read out Yahuwah even when it says Elohim as a name in the text because it doesn't make sense. And there's multiple places you can see this is obvious. Like for example, there's sometimes where it's extremely redundant and it will say Elohim, my Elohim. Doesn't make any sense. So now Elohim's a name and a title at the same time. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You'll see a lot of that in the book of Psalms where, Yahuwah is not there, but they have Elohim as a name and a title. So anyway, so just to explain why I read it as Yahuwah, Genesis 1:1. I mean, John 1:1, I meant.
Mhm.
So, and some translations have actually fixed that, by the way. Restored Name, King James, I'm a big fan of that translation for doing that. In John 1:1, they have the YHWH there. So I'm actually, certain translators get it. They get it that possibly there's been a corruption where, and might even be a misunderstanding about the word theos as well. I've heard others say so. Another possibility. So anyway, let's see here. Try to backtrack here. So we did Revelations 22:1-2. We got Revelations 21 verse 22 now. Revelations 21:22. But I saw no temple in it, for Yahuwah Elohim Almighty is its temple, also the Lamb. So a reason I wanted to include this, right, is because the word Sukkot means dwelling place or to dwell. So Yahuwah in the new heaven and new earth, Yahusha will be the dwelling place where we're dwelling. So I just thought I would include that one in Revelations 21 verse 22 there. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? We got Revelations 14:17-20. We only got like 2 more cross references here. All right, so Revelations 14:17-20. Okay, so then another messenger came out of the temple in heaven, and he also having a sharp sickle, and another messenger came out from the altar, having authority over the fire, and he called with a loud cry to the having the sharp sickle, saying, "Thrust in your sharp sickle, gather the grape clusters of the vine of the earth, because the grapes are ripe." So the messenger threw out his sickle to the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of Yahuwah. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and the blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles, 1,006 stadia. So I believe the reason I included this, I'm trying to remember why I included this actually.
It doesn't say 1,600, it says 1,006 stadia.
1,600,
Oh, okay.
not 1,600 now. So I'm trying to figure out why I included that one, because that doesn't really point to tabernacles at all. I'm trying to see why I included that. That might have been a mistake by me there. All right, let's see. Let's try Revelations 19, chapter 19, verses 6-10. That's the last one I have here. So it says here, "And I heard as the voice of a great multitude, and like the sound of many waters, like the sound of many thunders, saying, Hallelujah, for Yahuwah Elohim Almighty has begun to reign." So again, this is talking about, seems to be even hinting to the marriage supper of the Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to continue to read to that point. "Let us rejoice and exceedingly glad. Let us give esteem, for the wedding of the Lamb has come, and his wife has prepared herself. And to her it was granted that she should be dressed in fine linen, bright and pure, for the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the set apart ones. Then he said to me, Right, Baruch are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, These are the true words of Yahuwah." Yeah. So, yeah. So that's pretty much it. That's all that we have prepared for today. If you guys didn't get anything else, I would just remind you that this is a day that we should be constantly thinking about Yahusha, thinking about the future, looking forward to the wedding supper of the Lamb. That's going to happen. focusing on that Yahuwah loved us so much, he sent his only son to tabernacle with us. All these things we should be thinking about during this week, and just be joyful in Abba and what he has done for you. And to truly, even though we can't do physical sacrifices, but to give the bulls of our lips, the rams of our lips, be living sacrifices for Abba, So I think that's all I can leave you guys with. Okay. Yeah, maybe I read that wrong, brother. I don't know. The Complete Apostles Bible had it read almost like it said 1,600. I don't know. There could be something stupid.
No, what I was saying is that 1,600 is the same thing as 1,500.
Oh, that's yeah.
I wasn't going there, Joshua.
oh,
I was
okay.
just letting that lay.
Okay.
Okay.
I won't let it lay. I'll say
So
something.
riled. So I was giving some mercy there. Okay. And just leaving that one lay.
Well, I hope everyone that watched our study got something out of it. I hopefully people
great,
out
Doug.
there that are thinking that are being pulled by the Father out of the church, that hopefully this will encourage you to start looking into Abba's appointed times. I just want to say thank you for all that joined. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Have a great rest of your week of Tabernacles. Shalom.
Shalom.